Hi folks, I'm trying to just look at some of the lesson plans that we did today and use this video. It's a short video, probably around 5 to 6 minutes, to highlight some key things that came across that process. Okay, so the first thing is I want us all to understand very clearly that a lesson plan is not just a general guidelines of general ideas, right? We talked about this. You produce this lesson plan prior to the Monday class, which is absolutely fine, where we kind of created some of the filigree, right? We talked about some of the details and how to do it and how to think through that, and that's not necessarily here. I'm expecting that this will be more present into your arrangement for the lesson plan for the choral piece that you are doing in small groups. So I want to make sure that you listen to this prior to you finishing that by Monday morning, so that you kind of have a sense of some of the things that I'm talking about. All right, an introduction, the kind of principal idea in the beginning of the lesson is to create an experience, right? So even when you're starting, for instance, with a choral rehearsal, and you might do that with a warm-up, right? Together with that warm-up needs to be, right in the beginning, there could be kind of a listening experience that connects later on to what we're going to do. You can do the warm-ups thinking about specific patterns, specific ideas that will later connect to the body of the lesson plan. And then even if you start with a warm-up and you have very specific ideas, you're going to start with something that talks about longer phrasing because that's part of your piece, or you're going to start thinking about articulation because that's part of your piece. You're going to whatever it is that you might, there's kind of rhythmic challenge, and you're going to organize that alongside your warm-up exercise, right? And then you're going to go into this kind of experiential part of, which is kind of how do we get students to conceptualize some of the key things that are going to come up. So you're doing your piece, and you might be thinking about, okay, so one of the things that they need to have an understanding is the genre that this is coming from. Maybe this is connected to a African-American spiritual. Maybe this is connected to a kind of a Broadway sound, or maybe this is connected to a folk song. So how do I present, for instance, a series of listening experiences? They're going to be concise, about 5 minutes, but they're going to give them a kind of the sense, right, that the outcome of this process. So some of you talked about the kind of a finished idea, or in the UBD, right, in the understanding by design, what is the outcome that they're going to search back for, right? So think about that, and then organize with that, what are the kinds of other conceptual ideas that you want out of that listening? What is it that you want them to understand? Can you present a series of kind of vocal excerpts of the same piece and talk, for instance, about you're going to focus today on a particular set of musical ideas, but you also, all of them are going to be connected to this idea of vocal quality, for instance, something that connects the whole thing together, and that you find at different points upon which you're going to return and talk about vocal quality, for instance, or you're going to talk about what does it take to create authentic interpretation of the piece, right? So this is what's called a big question, or a generative question, or an essential question, that, and it might be a couple of them or 3 or so, that then link and connect to the whole thing. So I want you to return to this idea. So what is it that the introduction, what is it the experience that you're going to provide, and then how you transition from that experience into the body of the lesson plan. You can see in our website there's a few lesson plans that are there, and some of them, again, part of the problem is that they are very broad. So they say, for instance, hand out lyrics sheet, arrange students into circle, but they don't tell why you are going to do that, right? Some of them talk about, for instance, that give the procedures about, okay, students are going to start by reviewing rhythmic values, and they're going to get together with rhythm sticks and going to do this and that, which is all fine, and there's a kind of a general idea in that. But what's still missing is, how do I begin? How do I continue? What are the kind of learning things that are going to take place, right? The lesson plan is not simply a collection of things to do, but it's a way to organize student learning. So connected to all this needs to be specific things that you're trying to achieve, specific ideas, concepts, notions, right? Musical outcomes. So you have to articulate that to a certain extent. So if you talk about you selecting your piece, you're going to start in the beginning. Remember, no run-throughs, right? You're going to start in the beginning, and then you're going to focus on, let's say, 3 parts of the song that has something connected that you identified musically that connects that. And then you're going to organize that. Why is it that the rehearsal is going to run in those 3 things? What parts, the kind of musical ideas, elements, concepts that each of these parts represents? How are you going to provide some moments for music making, but also moments for some creative activity, some moments for some questions and dialogues that you are going to lead with specific things, moments of reflection, moments of connection to different listening activities, moments in which they break out into small groups, right, all different kinds of things, moments in which you link to some kind of theoretical music theory aspect to it, right? So how is it that you're going to organize it? How is it that you're going to really detail that in some ways? Look at the website again, and you're going to see that a couple of the lesson plans have really detailed kind of ideas. And so that says, for instance, one of them talks about, without speaking, we'll begin singing the song, this and that, and then the talks about how with hand gestures we're going to do this and this and this, and all this chunk's going to take 5 minutes. And then we move on to the next part, then indicate to students they're going to divide into groups, right? So I have the detail and say this is going to take 3 minutes, right? So start thinking also about what is it that you're going to do in that body, and how long that whole process is going to take. And then start thinking about how you finish the lesson as well. So you started with this experience, you provided the content, you selected things, not just a run through. You connected those things maybe to a theory question, maybe to a conceptual idea, maybe to some other listening activity, maybe to some group action. Maybe you connect it to a lyrics and you talk a little bit of poem, you talked about something else, that how that poem is organized. Maybe you provide an activity where students would have to create a little version of this, right? Or what kind of interpretation they would have to do that connects directly to the sense of the text in that particular page, and how is that different from the next, right? And then you're going to start thinking about, how do I close this? How do I refer back to where I started? What is the line that I try to connect and draw from the with the whole lesson? And how do I create a closure to that particular moment, the 50 minutes or the hour that I spend with them? And in what ways do I ask them to consider about what we did? Do I do a final little 2 or 3 minutes discussion? Do I ask questions and ask them to find in the score? Do I provide some kind of homework for the following day? Do I provide them with a task of finding something new, a piece of music or something that's going to connect to the next interpretation of this? Right, so how do I wrap up, and how do I create some level of assignment to it? But think about these things, think about the details, and think about the fact that the lesson plan is not just a general, we're going to learn this, we're going to be in circle, we're going to, but it's a detailed articulation of what you're going to do with an idea of why you're doing it, and with very specific decisions, so that it's not just, you're going to run through, or you're going to simply do the song and teach the song, right? These all need to be connected to some idea of what kind of learning do you want to happen, connected to elements like rhythmic, dynamics, phrasing, tempo, so forth and so on, connected to interpretative issues, right, and how to organize the basics of kind of dynamics, or the base or more complex understandings of within the genre, or relationships between text and music, or issues of range and how those are going to be dealt with, so forth and so on. Okay, so think through that, look at what the lesson plans that your colleagues have done, and I look forward to receiving the lesson plans on Monday. We're going to be meeting at 8:50, remember, and we're going to go observe at Ferguson. I have sent an email with that address and directions, but we'll meet 8:50 outside 157, and I'll leave together. Okay, bye-bye.